Governor Bush, you in a rally here in New Hampshire said that Donald Trump is a jerk. You said he's a chaos candidate. You said he's not serious and he can't insult his way to the presidency. But aren't those all insults? Are you trying to insult your way to the presidency?
No, I'm trying to point out that he's not a serious candidate. His answer about the nuclear triad, for example, was mind-blowing. I mean, not having any knowledge about what the subject is, where you have this exclusive responsibility of the President of the United States as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces to know when and how to use our nuclear deterrent. I mean, he has no knowledge about this stuff. He now has come out saying that Putin is a strong man and a great guy when he's trying to destabilize our relationship with our allies. He's not a serious candidate.
Why is the nuclear triad so important for people who don't understand what that is in a world of where Islamic Jihad is something people are so concerned about?
Well, it's important because first of all, we have the possibility of nuclear proliferation. The Iranian agreement actually creates the possibility of the Sunni Arab countries developing their own capacity. By legitimizing the Iranian regime, we create instability. But it's important because it's been part of the security arrangement that has kept us safe since the post-World War II era. And we've seen a lack of investment in it, and we've seen, we need to refurbish it and strengthen it. And the fact that he wouldn't know what it is kind of, that's one of those questions that I think you have to answer in a thoughtful way if you're running for President of the United States. But it's not just that. I mean, he said that ISIS is not a threat. 2 months ago, he gets his news from the shows. I know that warms your heart, that he wakes up in the morning and gets his foreign policy and military advice from people that go on your show, but that's not a serious man. And I don't take, look, when he insults me personally, I don't take it personally, and he shouldn't take it personally either, but someone needs to call him out.
Is there a larger message you're saying about, is this Donald Trump, or is there a larger argument you're making about how this campaign should be run and what the conversation should be about?
Well, that's a good question. I think the larger question for me is to be able to say that, unlike Donald Trump, I am qualified to lead, that I have thoughtful views, that I've thought it through, that I seek out advice, that I know what I don't know and have the humility to recognize that and seek out the best advice that I can get. That's what a next president has to do. You can't just walk in thinking you know everything when, in fact, it's a complicated world. We're living in dangerous times. And that conversation is beginning to take hold in the Republican primary, and I think that's good.
One of his policies that he's put forward is this idea of banning Muslims from the United States. You said that was he was unhinged when he offered that, but there is support, majority support, the polls show, in the Republican Party. So what does it say about those voters who are appealed to by that policy?
Well, it says a lot about Donald Trump that he would say these things knowing that it might have popular support. But that will wane when people realize that will make it harder for us to do what we need to do, which is to destroy ISIS. How are we going to ban Muslims in places like Pakistan and Indonesia and India, the 3 places where more Muslims exist? How does that solve our problem? How do we encourage Sunni-led countries to lead the fight with us to destroy ISIS, because they're on the front lines of this? You can't do it by banning Muslims into our country. That's just ridiculous. But look, people are scared, and when they hear someone that advocates a big position, I could see why people would migrate towards that, but that doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. In fact, over time, you're going to see that people are going to want to have a concrete policy, which means let's screen the people in the refugee communities, make sure that they're not embedding, Islamic terrorists aren't embedding inside these communities. Let's make sure the visa waiver program works. Let's secure our border. Let's do the things that practically can be done to keep us safe.
He also appears, though, to have a following in the party that goes beyond that specific proposal that we've been talking about, the Muslim proposal. What do you make of the contours of this campaign in which he has a strong and durable following?
Look, he's a gifted politician, and he knows exactly what to say to garner support. People are deeply frustrated about Washington, about how it's not working, about how it looks like people are, divvying up the spoils, and the middle class has had declining income. Job growth is stagnant. There are reasons why people are angry, and he's preying on that, not offering tangible solutions. And ultimately, in places like New Hampshire particularly, I think people are going to want to have someone be the party's nominee that has plans, that has detailed plans and practical experience, maybe not based in Washington, but practical experience about how you solve problems, and stick to it so that we can move our country forward again.
Putin You said that Donald Trump liked what Vladimir Putin said about him. Explain to people why that doesn't, why that's a problem.
Well, Putin is organized to challenge the United States across the world now. He views his success by pushing us back. We're losing influence around the world, and Putin is gaining influence. He's not an ally. I think John Kerry is absolutely wrong to suggest that we have shared interest in Syria. His interest is to prop up the Assad regime. His interest is to align himself with Iran, and that clearly can't be in our interest if we're going to create a stable world. He's a dictator. He's a bully. He has nothing to admire with him, other than the fact that he's strong. And we can admire that, we can respect that, but he admires strength too. We need a president that actually will stand up for American interests, whether it's in Europe or in the Middle East. And that's how you create a better relationship with Putin. You don't brag about how great a guy he is. He's not. He kills journalists. Anybody that opposes him ultimately is pushed away. They don't have a capitalist system. They have basically a kleptocracy. These are people that are making billions and billions of dollars because of their relationship with Putin. It is not a country to admire.
You mentioned that Donald Trump is playing on strength, talking about strength. Is there too much of a conversation about strength in politics? Does that create an appetite for big showy acts that help a candidacy like that?
Look, he would not exist were it not for Barack Obama. He is the anecdote in some people's minds to the politically correct, divisive policies of Barack Obama. At the end of the day, strength is not measured by the volume of your voice. It's measured by your fortitude, by your determination, by the things that strength always is measured by. And when people here particularly, they get to see all the candidates in New Hampshire, in these early states, when they start figuring out who do you want to have sit behind the big desk, it's not going to be the entertainer-in-chief. It's going to be someone who can fit the role as commander-in-chief.
Some of the people who are supporting you and who have been wondering about your campaign say that in this recent mode where you've been more vocal about Donald Trump, that you have found your voice. Do you see it that way?
I'm in the here and now. I'm fighting the fight. To a certain extent, it is a little liberating to be able to post up against a guy who's not qualified to be president and to share your vision about the better way. But you know what I really like? I really like having a town hall meeting where his name doesn't come up and where we get to talk about how you fixed our healthcare system and how we destroy ISIS and how we re-engage with the world. New Hampshire's a special place in that regard. They actually care about real issues, and it's a nice respite.
One last question. On the question of the nuclear triad, wasn't that a kind of a pop quiz kind of question? I mean, your brother was given a pop quiz question. That didn't say anything about his qualifications for the office, did it?
It was a pop quiz question, and he failed. You put an F on the scorecard. I mean, if you don't have enough intellectual curiosity to learn about the duties of being commander-in-chief, how do you expect people to believe that you're going to be serious when you get there? I mean, it was a question. I think Hugh Hewitt knew exactly what he was doing when he asked that question. In fact, by the way, he asked that question to every candidate on his radio show. It is a test, and he failed.
Let's talk about ISIS. In the debate, you said that the United States must destroy ISIS before it destroys us. Do you really think that that's the level of this threat, that it can destroy the United States?
It can stop Los Angeles School District from opening for 2 days because of a random email from Germany. It can change our way of life. It can hurt our prospects economically. It can destabilize our country for sure. Will there be an army invading the United States? No, we're still capable of defending the homeland from that kind of threat. But are we capable of defending against people that are energized by this radical Islamic terrorism? That's the challenge that we face right now. And this is not going to go away. This is going to be a long war. They view their success by destroying Western civilization and the values that we believe in. Our freedom is our weakness, in effect. And so, look, there should be some allowance for, in political discourse, to make the point in a way to get people's attention. And we are at risk here. This is not a isolated kind of, these guys aren't living in a cave. They have a caliphate the size of Indiana, and they can't be contained. Containment means they win. President Obama hasn't gotten that until recently. It appears now he begins to realize that perhaps a policy of containment is not going to work.
What if all the talk about destroying America, the talk about the threat from ISIS creates a sense of jitteriness that causes the LA school board to be so jittery that they're...
Good point. And look, I think the president needs to lead in this regard. He can't view this as a law enforcement exercise or another opportunity to talk about gun control. He ought to lay out what the threat is, alleviate our fears by saying that we can solve this, that defending the homeland, here are the things that we're going to do. I happen to think that one of the things that the president could do is to say, look, we have 800,000 sworn law enforcement officers in this country, and we have 300 million people. If we're vigilant, we can deal with these threats. It should have been known that two radicalized Americans, one a citizen and one became a citizen, they were organizing for years. They had pipe bombs in their garage, for crying out loud. There ought to be greater vigilance, and so we don't have to scare people, but I think we have to have a heightened awareness.
Let's talk about fighting ISIS overseas. When you laid out your plans for doing this, you said two things. You said, one, get the lawyers out of the way. Yeah. Too much concern about collateral damage. The lawyers are getting in the way of the people trying to prosecute the war. You also said, we want to build alliances with Arab nations.
Yes.
Can't those be in conflict, though? Isn't it the collateral damage that creates an atmosphere that makes it hard for those Arab nations to ally with the United States?
First of all, we have to apply the international norms of warfare for sure. But this president has added additional features. So if we've identified a prospective terrorist, and you want to begin to develop a strategy to capture or kill, there's added features way beyond what the international standards are. PPG 28, it's a memorandum. I mean, there's way too much involvement. We send leaflets out to the truck drivers that are sending illicit diesel fuel across the border in Turkey saying, well, if you keep doing it, we're going to bomb you. Well, I think we can assume that they're part of the ISIS network if they're doing that. Those things would send a signal to the Arab world that we're serious. That would be what we need to do. They need to understand that we're not viewing this as a law enforcement exercise. It doesn't mean that you're going to automatically just carpet bomb Mosul, like one of the candidates had a hard time explaining why he would carpet bomb anything.
Was that a mistake for, you're talking about Senator Ted Cruz to say carpet bomb. Why is that a mistake for him to say that?
Well, because there are 800,000 people that live in Mosul. There's probably 5,000 Islamic terrorists that control the place. We're going to destroy 800,000 lives with a carpet bombing activity. This is foolish. It is absolutely foolish. And he had to back away from it. It was kind of clumsy because he's a gifted speaker. It was a little unusual to see him stumble a bit. But that's what we need to avoid. If you want to develop the coalition, as you asked, you can't talk about carpet bombing Mosul or carpet bombing held territory by ISIS that brings huge collateral damage.
There was also a discussion in the debate about when to have regime change and when not to. When should the United States be in support of removing a leader of a country?
I think we have to, first of all, the most important part of that is it has to be in our national security interests, number one. And number two, if we're to do it, there better be a plan to deal with the aftermath. I think that's the lesson learned. When Libya went away, if there was a security threat, I'm not certain. I think that's a borderline call, to be honest with you. But when Gaddafi left, there was no plan to engage to make sure that there was stability. And now we have just total chaos. So I think the bigger issue is, what do you do in the aftermath of regime change? And I think it ought to be done very cautiously. That actually was one of the more thoughtful parts of the debate, to be honest with you.
In Syria, you've talked about a no-fly zone and a safe zone, and you've said also that if there need to be new American forces in there, you'd wait to hear from military advisors. Yeah. Military advisors have said a safe zone requires about 30,000 troops. Are you on for that? Is that a... Safe
zones, probably, more likely, not just one. And I would get options from them, and I think it needs to be, we're going to have special operators for sure. We're going to have to train a Sunni army. The suggestion that there are no Sunni forces in Syria willing to fight is just wrong. There are 30 to 40,000 of them, but they're all disparate, all spread out across the country, not in an organized way. So yeah, we need more. You can't do this just by the air. It's going to require a bigger commitment than that.
I guess the fear is people think, well, if it takes 30,000 to hold those safe zones, because you got to keep them safe, then that's the beginning. And then, as you say, you got to follow on. You got to make sure you don't just leave a country and have it decay. So that's, people can see that growing into a real engagement in Syria.
So if the next president, and I'm working hard to make it me, needs to explain to the American people exactly what the plan is and what the intention is and what the end objective is. We're not going to have an occupying force in Syria. That won't solve the problem. What we need, though, is to make sure that we're doing this in concert with the Arab nations as well as the Sunnis in Syria that desperately want to bring stability. The other part of the safe zone idea that's important is that it's the way to solve the refugee problem. 4 million people stuck, most of them stuck in refugee camps, million apiece in Lebanon and Turkey and Jordan. This is going to have a massive destabilizing impact in the region. And if we do nothing, we're going to create a breeding ground, multi-generational breeding ground of additional terrorism. So the safe zone idea is not just for military purposes, it's for humanitarian purposes as well.
In the debate, there was a discussion between Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz on immigration. It seemed to be who was in favor of legalization and citizenship in the past. What do you make of that debate?
Well, it was so typical of two senators debating about filing amendments and calling it success.
Says the grandson of a senator.
Yeah, exactly. They did stuff back then. I mean, now literally they were arguing about something that didn't happen and making a big point about it. Come on, man. I mean, what we need to do is have a president that has a plan that fixes this mess, controls the border, lays out a strategy, gets approval from Congress, goes about the business of fixing the illegal immigration system and also fixing the legal system. And the plan that I've laid out, in fact, I bet you, I think this is accurate, I'm the only candidate that has had the same plan for the last 4 years. Everybody else is either in the witness protection program or have changed their views mirroring the anger that might exist in front of them.
Yeah, talk about that anger and that dynamic, because we'll talk about that.
Well, my plan for illegal immigration has been and continues to be a path to legal status where you earn it. You pay a tax, you pay a fine, you pay taxes, you work, you don't receive federal government assistance. You learn English, you don't commit crimes, and over an extended period of time, you earn legal status. I think a great majority of Americans are comfortable with that practical approach. Other people have different views, but their views change because the world has changed. People are angry that Barack Obama and Congress haven't gotten their act together to do what they need to do, which is to enforce the rule of law.
But you say that in the campaign, people are either not saying what they believe or they're running away from what they believed in the past because of the environment of the campaign? Is it?
Yeah, sure. That's the only, I mean, why else would someone change their views? And all of them have. And look, we're running for President of the United States. You got to have a heart for people. You got to understand why people are frustrated. You have to have a mind to be able to come up with creative solutions to fix the things that need to be fixed. And you got to have a spine. You got to have a backbone. Look, this is a tough job. You think it's hard to deal with angry people about immigration in a town hall meeting? Yeah, I mean, it's not the easiest thing to do, but it's a lot harder dealing with Putin or President Xi and the ambitions of China or dealing with the stagnant economy that we face. There are great challenges out here, and you need someone whose compass points north, who's willing to persuade people towards their cause rather than back away whenever there's any pressure.
Do you think there's become a kind of competition in the primary to sort of see who can be tougher on undocumented workers?
The rhetoric gets pretty ugly, and it's not going to solve the problem. I try to stay away from language that isn't going to end up being part of the solution. We've got big challenges in this country. We also have enormous opportunities, and we need someone who's focused on fixing the things that are holding us back right now.
Let's talk about politics at the end here. 6 months ago, people thought you were the front runner. Your campaign is not the front.
I hated that.
You hated being a front runner?
Yeah, I feel much better back here.
Why'd you hate being the front runner?
Well, because I've always thought that there was going to be a high expectation for me, and I totally get it.
Because?
Because I have a brother that was president and a father that was president. And that higher expectation, it was important to realize. And so being the front runner made me feel like that people are going to begin to say, well, the guy's just dancing right through this. I have to go earn it. I have higher expectations on me than people have of me, so it doesn't bother me a bit that the expectations are high. And I want to win, which means that you garner momentum when it matters. And so I feel good about where we are right now.
You don't have an expectations problem now. You have to fight. So what are you going to do to fix it?
I'm going to campaign my heart out here in New Hampshire and in Iowa and in South Carolina, and I'm going to show who I am and give people ideas that we can fix these things and give them some sense that the future is going to be brighter. And you can do that here one-on-one. I literally met a guy at a town hall meeting today that said, I got 5 votes. My family, we decided to vote together. It's between you and another candidate. We've already developed a strategy to get those 5 votes. It'll be implemented tomorrow. I mean, this is how you win. All in, and that's what we're going to do.
You mentioned your father and brother. Do you think there's a feeling that just we don't want another Bush?
I think there's a beginning to be, I mean, at the beginning, that's why the expectations are higher. I think that I have to go earn it, and I have to share my view of the future. It can't be about the past. I know that for a fact.
You've been reading John Meacham's book about your father.
Yeah.
What have you taken from that book?
Oh man, what a great man my dad was. How he dealt with conflict in a way that was pretty extraordinary. We forget that, you know, Noriega was taken out being a drug dealer. Operation Desert Storm, how phenomenal that was. The fall of the Berlin Wall. He was an extraordinary leader.
Tough campaigns too, 80, 88. Do you take strength from, he was behind the 8 ball a couple of times.
He was, and he fought hard, and he you know, came from behind and won in some cases, had setbacks in 88, and you know, high expectations on him as being vice president, and you know, fought through that and won in a really tough general election too.
All right, Governor Bush, thanks so much.
Thanks.